entity types, and taxes. An introduction to business taxes. I'm going to begin by walking you through federal taxes. Federal taxes are the taxes paid to the IRS. They include personal taxes, corporate taxes, and payroll taxes. I want to take a moment and go over tax forms. The first tax form is the 1040. This is the individual tax return. The second one is the Schedule C. The Schedule C gets attached to the individual tax return if there's an individual with a business that is a sole proprietor. The sole proprietor business doesn't have its own standalone tax return. It just gets bundled with the human's tax return. Then there's the Schedule 1120. This is the tax return for a corporation. This tax return is filed separately from the 1040. There are, of course, many more tax returns than this. What I'm really hoping to do is to keep things simple so that I can explain the flow of what's happening so that you can get a foundation of understanding. Let's talk about different types of businesses. I'm going to discuss sole proprietors, LLCs, and corporations. I'm going to begin with the business type of sole proprietorship. This type of business files their taxes on a Schedule C, which is then attached to the 1040, the 1040 being the tax return for the human. The sole proprietor does not owe any taxes. The business revenue is reported on the individual's tax return, and the tax is calculated there. If there's tax owed, it's the responsibility of the human who owes the business. It is not an expense to the business. There's a business type of an LLC. This could be a limited liability corporation or a limited liability company. This is not an IRS designation. There is no tax form for LLC. An LLC can be taxed as a sole proprietor or taxed as a corporation. The method of taxation determines which form is filled out and how the taxes are paid. The next business type I want to go over is the S Corp. This type of business will file their taxes on a Form 1120-S. The revenue is reported on the individual's tax return, and any tax owed is calculated as a part of the individual's tax return. Any tax owed is the responsibility of the individual or the human, but not the business. Last but not least is the C Corp. This type of business files their taxes on a Form 1120. The C Corp may owe taxes to the IRS. If it does owe taxes to the IRS, it is an expense to the business. Speaking of taxes, I want to pivot and talk about which agencies collect tax revenue, and then, of course, what that tax revenue could be. There's the IRS, we talked about that. There's also the state, and then there could be local taxes. So, what kind of tax revenue? Well, there's income tax, there's payroll tax, and there's sales tax. When evaluating how to file your taxes, you really have two approaches. The first approach is to do it yourself, and the second is to outsource. If you're going to choose to do it yourself, you can use the irs.gov website to navigate and find solutions, or you can use a third-party software such as TurboTax or H&R Block. I'm not recommending or endorsing, I'm just letting you know what's out there. If you choose to outsource to a professional, I have two web links for you. The first is the IRS guide on how to choose a tax professional, and the second is the IRS guide to explain what an enrolled agent is. If you're not familiar with what an enrolled agent is, it's a person who's passed a series of exams, allowing them to represent clients from all 50 states in front of the IRS. People who choose to be enrolled agents are passionate about tax and making sure they're always current on the latest and greatest in tax. Let's pivot into payroll taxes. The federal payroll taxes are federal unemployment, Medicare, and Social Security. I have federal withholding on the list even though it's not a payroll tax. I have it on the list because it is money withheld from people's paychecks. It's money that needs to be remitted to the IRS and is reported on the same form as the other payroll taxes. Let's start with federal unemployment. Federal unemployment is reported annually on the 940, and it's paid 100% by the employer. Federal withholding. This is the one I mentioned earlier. It's reported quarterly on the Form 941. It is not a tax. It's a prepayment of the taxes the individual will owe when filing their federal tax return. So it's a withholding that just gets applied towards whatever might be owed on their 1040. Then there's Social Security. Social Security is reported quarterly on the 941. It's paid by the employee and the employer. Medicare, same thing as Social Security. It's reported on the 941. It's paid by the employee and the employer. I have examples of state and local payroll taxes. The taxes that apply are going to vary from location to location. They'll be based on where the employee is working. The taxes might include unemployment insurance, workers' comp, family medical leave, personal income tax, state disability insurance, employment training tax. One way to file and pay the IRS forms is to contact the IRS directly and follow the instructions. I have links for them here. Another way to file and pay all of your payroll forms is to use a payroll processing company. A payroll processing company will ensure your employees get paid, that you're compliant both federally and on the state level. I have a couple examples of solutions for you. There's Gusto, OnPay, ADP, and Paychex. I'm not endorsing any particular provider. What I am doing is giving you resources or a starting place if you're just not sure where to go to find a payroll company. Next, I'm going to go over other local taxes that you may or may not encounter. There's business and occupation, which is like an income tax for the business. There's personal property tax, which is a tax on the equipment the business owns. There's a real estate or property tax based on the real estate the business owns. And then there's sales tax, which is often collected at the time of the sale and then held in reserves until it's time to remit it.